In September 2012, the first long-term study on the effects of GMOs being consumed by live organisms was completed. The results were disturbing. GMOs turn food into poison. Consumption of such foods may cause a massive increase in cancer for all who eat them. When tested on rats, genetically modified foods cause them to develop horrifying tumors and other related diseases. 70% of the female population died prematurely, and virtually all of them suffered severe organ damage from consuming GMOs. From the beginning of the 1990s, the number of companies producing GMO products has grown exponentially. Today, 75% of the food at Canadian grocery stores contains genetically modified ingredients, mainly in the form of four crops: corn, soy, cotton, and canola. Among the products you buy, GMOs can be found in meats, alcohol, soft drinks, juices, dairy products, frozen food, pasta, canned goods, baby food, cereal, bread, cosmetics, and even shampoo. This is not even half of the list. It is the worst trial and error case in the history of the food industry. The mass poisoning of billions of people with a toxic food crop that was never properly tested. Corporations are risking the future health and sustainability of life on this planet to pad their own pockets. They may have the power of industry, but we have each other. Our unity can protect us. Don't let anyone destroy our future. Join us today.
If it's being used so much, do we know how much people actually ingest from the food that we eat? I mean, you hear the whole spectrum saying, you know, rinse off your food and it's fine, to, you know, be careful what you eat, the clean 15 and all that. Do we know how much we're actually getting into our body?
Well, we know that, start with, it's a systemic chemical.
Okay.
Just like 2,4-D. It's taken up, and that's what's made it such a popular herbicide, is you can squirt it on the plant, and it distributes throughout the plant then, moves down into the root system, and then about 15 to 20% will move out into the soil for that antibiotic activity there. So that anytime you're eating the food, you're going to have glyphosate in it if it's been sprayed with it, or if it's taken it up from the soil, because it's a systemic chemical. It accumulates in the root tips, shoot tips, and the reproductive structures. Well, those are the things that we eat. We know that our levels in the surveys that have been done, and they're be nice to have a lot more data, but we know that our levels are anywhere from 16 to 160 times what they are in Europe, where they don't have the genetically engineered crops grown. They do import soybeans and feed it to the animals. But glyphosate also accumulates in the bones, in the muscle, the heart, the brain, liver, kidneys, so that you have even 160 times more glyphosate in breast milk than you have in the urine. So that it's accumulating in the body. Again, it's a very toxic entity on a long-term basis. It's like tobacco. It's a chronic toxin, not an acute toxin, so you don't die immediately, just like you don't keel over dead when you smoke the first pack of cigarettes. May take 20 years to accumulate. If you look at the epidemiological data and the clinical data that we're seeing now that's being published, it's a lot faster than we anticipated.
we feature a battle that is underway down south. This is harvest time for some very valuable crops, cotton among them. And this year, farmers have a real battle on their hands, a menacing weed that seems to have a mind of its own. Steve Osunsami has the story from Marvell, Arkansas.
Across the South,
it is the super weed.
it's the weed that man can no longer kill.
I'm afraid it's here to stay for a while.
It's called the pigweed. It's native to North America, and for decades, farmers have been able to control it by spraying their fields with herbicides. This past summer, Pace Hinesley and other farmers started noticing the chemicals were no longer working.
There's no rhyme or reason how we can control it.
The weeds have adapted, and this year they're choking more than 1 million acres of cotton and soybeans.
It can be very, very expensive.
In the last 3 months, Jim Hubbard has spent more than $500,000 fighting them, and they still won't die.
So man versus weed today, who's winning this round?
Weed.
This is one formidable weed. It grows up to 3 inches a day, and at its base, it's as thick as a baseball bat. It kills crops and it destroys heavy machinery. It keeps farmers from bringing their combines and cotton pickers into the fields.
It'll stop the combine dead in its tracks.
I've worked in agriculture for 30+ years. I've never seen anything that's going to have this kind of impact on our agriculture.
This plant here could produce how many plants next year?
Oh, 200,000.
Farmers are on the attack, hiring laborers to walk through their crops and chop the plants down before they spread. Sometimes their tools break.
Oh, take a good picture of that one. Damn hose just broke.
The scientists who created the herbicide blamed their customers, the farmers, for overuse, saying it was only a matter of time before Mother Nature came up with a workaround. They're engineering a solution, but it won't be ready for another 7 years.
Somewhere between 2015 and 16.
In the meanwhile, farmers will continue to lose their fields to this enemy. And in the coming weeks, some of them may be forced to harvest their crops by hand. Steve Osunsami, ABC News, Marvell, Arkansas.
The Supreme Court case of Monsanto Company versus Bowman involved farmers in the United States who had issues with Monsanto's genetically modified seeds ending up in their fields. Monsanto won the case and was granted the ability to sue farmers whose fields became contaminated with their material. The issues with genetically modified organisms will always reside in our society, communities, and nation. Genetically modified organisms have spread into our fields, our bodies, and the environment. But there are some actions that can be taken to prevent these altered organisms from continuing their negative effects on our children, families, and friends in the future.